Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. We are back to doing community updates on regular days outside of the month of Ramadan. Yesterday we had Sheikh Amin Muhammad, and we don't want to just sort of forget and only have one moment of thought about what he said. And today I want to build on that by talking about something that another one of our local imams said, Imam Muhammad Mendez, who is nationally known, and his words are spreading around on this topic of this situation of police brutality towards African Americans. And he said that when we look at this, we do have an example from the Sirah of archetypes, of types of people that exist at this time. And he specifically brought the mention of Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah, who was, of course, an East African slave in Mecca, and who was beaten quite viciously by Umayyah ibn Khalaf, and nobody from the Quraysh would say anything or stopped him. Right? All the Quraysh, no one would touch a man who was as powerful as Umayyah ibn Khalaf, who chose to whip his slave and place heavy rocks on the body of Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah. So that's the one archetype of the Muslim who is because of his social status, not just because of his religion. If you have to notice, Sayyidina Bilal was not just being tortured just because of his religion. His religion may have prompted it, but Umayyah was able to do so because of his social status as a slave and as somebody that was looked down upon. Okay. And most of the slaves at that time were from East Africa. They were black slaves. So that's the one archetype, and that's the type of person who is suffering, and the type of person who is it's open season against them. The second archetype is obviously the criminal, Umayyah ibn Khalaf himself, right? The third archetype is Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Now, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was a Muslim of means. He was wealthy. He was a Muslim of nobility. He was untouchable in himself because of the tribe that he had behind him. He was a man of the of one of the higher order tribes and clans within the Quraysh. So he was not touchable. Couldn't touch Abu Bakr. Could not punish him. Could not torture him. Could not do anything against him. Likewise, Sayyidina Umar, when he went in and picked those fights, when he first became Muslim, one of the chiefs said, "Don't kill him, because if you kill him, he has a very strong tribe behind him. So be careful what you do to him." So Muslims have tranches, or we have subcategories amongst us: those who are socially well off, financially well off, and in our area, maybe, or in every country, there are sub tribes and sub ethnicities, some that are more respected than others. There's no way to slice it. That every nation, every society has their own hierarchy of who they respect the most, and then who's at the bottom that has no protection. And so here we have two Muslims, of one of where it's open season on one, and the other is protected. So what did the protected one do? He went out of his way, and he spent a lot of his time and effort to ensure that Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, that Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah was made free. And the famous story is that he offered a price of 40 gold coins. And Umayyad said yes right away before Abu Bakr could change his mind. And then after the deal, because they were both businessmen together, in the sense that they're sort of the same guild of trade, Umayyah said, "Abu Bakr, you know that you could have gotten, I would have sold him to you for 8. If you had just said 8 gold coins, I would have said yes." And Abu Bakr Siddiq replied, "And if you had asked for 100, I would have given you 100." Right? So which archetype are we going to be part of? Are we going to, there must be, Imam Mendez didn't mention this, but I think there you could add a fourth archetype, which is the one who's not harmed. Their social status is of enough to protect them from the Muslims, but yet he's inactive. He's not taking action. He's not doing anything, right? And I think that he left that out because that would almost be accusing a Sahabi. If that was the case, it would be like accusing a Sahabi, and we can't do that. But in our situations, that's what we do have. We have people who have a social status in the society, and there's going to be a spectrum there that they're not touched. No one can touch them, right? Now, what Sheikh Amin said yesterday is that don't think that that's going to last forever. If the dhulm is allowed to fester, the whole body is going to be affected. And so we have to rush, if it's not too late, to be that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq archetype, to be that archetype that even though we're enjoying our safety, we're working to the best of our ability to do something. Now, what are we going to do? We're not going to. Anyone here going to transform law enforcement? I don't think so. Is anyone here going to change the situation? It's impossible. But what we can do is advocate, right? And there's two types of social work. Now, some people have I've heard this before, and I found it made sense. Is that being active in society is two things. It's alleviating hunger. It's almost like it's taking care of the needy on one hand, and it's advocating for the oppressed on the other hand. And every day we should ask ourselves, did we do anything? And the way in which it's done is by the hand. You could literally get food and give it to somebody. Okay. In most places, maybe you live so far removed in rural countries and rural areas that you would have to drive, an extensive amount of time to find those who are in need. But in most cases, maybe it's only 5 minutes. You go to a neighborhood where it's the urban center, and you know that there are people in need there. You could physically, with your hand, give food, give clothes to the needy and the poor. So the first way is with your hand. The second way is with your tongue, right? And that and the tongue extends to the pen and extends to the keyboard. And that's what we can do, right? That's what we can do. And the Prophet ﷺ said this for a reason. He said, because sometimes your hands are cleft. There's nothing you can do physically, but you can advocate. And number three, the least, and the Prophet ﷺ said, that which is weakest is that which is with the tongue, with the heart. That which is with the heart is, and that is the weakest. That is the weakest of faith. And when he said it's the weakest of faith, it has two possible meanings. Number one, that's the weakest status of a Muslim. Like the Muslims are the weakest if that's all they can ever do. So we're politically weak. We're socially weak. Or he meant that a person is nervous in his nature, that is scared in his nature, that lacks trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore doesn't do these things, and he merely changes it with his heart. So he says, you know what, I don't want to stick my neck out and lose something, but I hate what's going on here. Okay. So he's weak personally in himself and his iman. Now, when it comes to changing with the hand and changing with the tongue and changing with the heart, it's very important to know who's who. The one who is obligated to change a matter with their hand is somebody is obligated, not just recommended. Wajib is someone who has the authority to do so. So if I'm in your room, I come and visit your room and I bring some drugs. You can't just say, oh, please just remove that. This is your house. You are obligated to take that and discard it, throw it in the garbage. You're obligated. It's wajib. I'm a guest in your house. We're having dinner. I start throwing food at somebody. You have to physically restrain me from abusing your other guests. You have to physically do it. It's not sufficient for you to say, oh, please respect my house. No, you have to physically get up and stop it. Okay. Quran mentions nushuz. If you see in your household nushuz, which is far extremely disgusting sins that are happening in your house, you're physically obligated to take it. Okay. And stop it. A governor in his city is obligated to use force to stop oppression, to stop certain things from happening. And oppression for us is everything that Allah considers forbidden. We consider it either oppression against people or oppression against the rights of Allah Ta'ala, and oppression against your own soul. So someone's harming himself. Okay. You see someone's about to kill themselves. It's obligatory upon the township or the state to stop that person and put him in suicide watch. Okay. So we do recognize the idea of harm against the body. We also believe in harm against the soul. Okay. So that's the one who's obligated. The governor, a teacher in a classroom, okay, a person in their own home, a boss in his job is obligated to stop the wrong with his own hands. Okay. The second category, who's obligated, not just recommended, obligated to stop and forbid the wrong with their tongue, which we said extends to the pen and extends to the keyboard. Okay, whatever means of communication, that's the scholar. Okay, the alim. Now, you might be asking, okay, hold on a second. What is exactly who is the scholar? Is there a body out there that says this is the scholar and that's not the scholar? Is there a body that does that? Is there a school that you can graduate from and be a scholar? The answer is that it's those who are viewed, who are in the position of scholars in the society. All right. So if you're in the position of a scholar, that means you're the imam of the masjid, you're the khatib of the masjid. That's one answer. That you're in your position where people respect you as the scholar, and they expect you to guide them on what's right and what's wrong. So that's one answer to it. Second answer to it is that if you've researched a matter and you've taken the knowledge from a scholar, then in that case, on that subject matter, you're a scholar. So if I went and I sat and I called, I emailed, I had I went to office hours and talked to people who were scholars about a mas'ala and got all the different opinions and came to the realization of what is forbidden across the board. At that point, and I become I'm educated in that specific matter, okay? A to Z on that specific mas'ala, okay? Then I'm a scholar on that mas'ala. I could talk about that mas'ala, all right? So some of the scholars on finance, for example, they might not know the rules of inheritance, for example. They might not know the rules of divorce, but they know the rules of finance. They know what is haram in a financial contract. So it becomes a scholar in that specific question. Another one, that which is ma'lum min ad-din bid-darura, that which is known in religion by necessity, is something that you are now a scholar in. Okay, so you don't need to be a scholar for that. Sorry, the better way to say it is you don't need to be a scholar. Is there any Muslim here who doesn't know that there are 5 times we pray 5 times a day? Can you possibly grow up to be 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, and not know that there's one God? Okay, that we fast the month of Ramadan. Ask any 11-year-old Muslim, what month do we fast? Ramadan, right? So the things that are ma'lum in ad-din bid-darura, that the Kaaba is in Mecca, that the Prophet is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, is anyone who doesn't know that? Right, that there's heaven and hell. So these are what's known in religion by necessity. You don't need to be a scholar. Is there anyone who's like 14 years old that doesn't know pork and wine are haram and beer is haram to consume? So you could be 15 years old and you don't know anything, but you're a Muslim, and at least you know that you're allowed to use your tongue, all right, to forbid someone from doing that. Someone says, let's go. I think it's okay to have beer in Islam. You don't need to be a scholar to say, no, it's not. Okay. Someone says, I only pray 3 times a day because and there are groups that do that, by the way. There are only 3 prayers a day in the Quran. So Quran only mentions morning, noon, and afternoon. And so I only pray 3 times a day. So you don't need to be a scholar to say, sorry, you're way off on that. All right. Just like you don't need to be, a scholar to know, you need to be a lawyer and know law enforcement, what's allowed and what's not allowed to know that what happened to in Minneapolis was nothing less than murder. Right? Certain things you don't need to be a scholar in, and you don't need to be educated. That's what known in religion by necessity. Right? So other than that, so that defines who can talk with their tongue and with their keyboards and with their pen. Other than that, if it's something I don't really know but doesn't sit well with me, then I hate it with my heart. It's something that's way beyond my control and I don't have a voice, and I have 2 people on my Facebook page and 3 people in my cell phone, and I can't really talk. I don't even have friends. No one listens to me. Then I hate it in my heart. And for that type of person who's hating something in his heart because he has no other choice, then it's not him who's weak. It's just his situation is weak. He's politically weak. Okay. His impact in society is weak. Doesn't mean his iman is weak. All right. So this is the concept of commanding right and forbidding wrong. Now, what do we command and forbid? There's a condition. All right. On what and on how. Number one condition of commanding right and forbidding wrong is that what you're forbidding has to be forbidden in all the madhabs. Okay. It cannot be something forbidden for you in one madhab and permitted to another. Like, for example, alcohol that has najasa in it. Right. Alcohol, cologne, perfumes that have alcohol or as the means of making it thin and letting you put it in a spray bottle, they use alcohol. Now, what do the scholars say about that alcohol? We know alcohol is najis. It's najis. You can't, if you use it, you have to rub it off before you pray. So the ulama differed upon this subject. They differed. Some said it's najis. You have to rub it off your body before you pray. Others said, no, it's not the case. It's only najis when it's in the form of drinking. When we want to drink it, it becomes treated with as najis. So the scholars differed. So if you see someone about to pray, I'm about to put my hands up to pray, and you know what? Let me put some cologne on, and he puts alcohol-based cologne on, you can't say, hey, stop, go wash that off. You can't say that because there's a difference of opinion about it. If there's a difference of opinion, you cannot forbid the wrong. So that's the first condition. It has to be forbidden across all the madhabs. So you need knowledge. You have to learn. Secondly, there is a second condition. You have to ask yourself the question, if talking will make matters worse, then you can't do it. If moving something with your hand will make matters worse, then you should not do it. Okay. So you have to ask yourself that question. By forbidding wrong, am I going to make matters better or worse? And if the answer is predominantly it's going to make things worse, then you shouldn't do it. All right. And that's why there's a rule that says that the silence of the Prophet ﷺ indicates acceptability. Right? If the Prophet's silent about something, then it's acceptable. However, that is not the case for anyone else besides the Prophet. So therefore, you may see a very upright, noble sheikh, scholar, or your parent, or someone you trust, and you see someone walk across with a can of beer, or you see someone walking in the masjid in an inappropriate way. And you're like, well, why didn't he forbid the wrong? Why is he silent on this? It's because he's calculated that sometimes silence or speaking may make matters worse. So therefore, silence equals approval only for the Prophet ﷺ. Only the Prophet ﷺ is silence indicate approval. Okay. All right. So let's see with that if we have any comments from the live chat. I know a lot of people like to use the live chat and talk and see what's going on in the live chat, and we haven't done this for quite a while. So let's go into the live chat and see who else is around. And just for those who have been involved in the community updates in the past, guess who showed up to the masjid on Eid when we had the drive-through? Our old friend Luis Gamer 13 or whatever his name, or his Luis Gamer 31 or Luis Gamer 13. They actually came. Their mom bought them, and they are like 13 years old. And if you're part of the live chats, you saw this person keep every day before Ramadan. They kept saying, Luis Gamer 13, could you say my name and ask a question? Well, he got his it's a she got her mom to bring her to the masjid, so she got a big kick out of coming to MBIC. Okay. So a lot of people giving salams. So jazakumullah khairan to everyone who's giving salam and praying for the community. We need this. We need a lot of dua for the community. This is an era of dua. It's a time that the evil in the world is out of our hands. A lot of it's out of our hands, and it's definitely outweighed the good. And evil is not what people think is evil. Evil is what Allah tells us in the Quran is evil, and it's outweighed the good. So we have to sort of fight through that as much as possible, and look at our situation as who can we help that's right next to us, right? Who could we, and right next to us is our family. The first person that's part of the ummah is our family, right? And sometimes they might not like what we have to say, but it's for their own good and their own benefit. And we just have to make sure we try to be as gentle as possible. But sometimes, especially with youth, They won't like a lot of what you said, but you have to guide them. If you had a young man, he's 19 years old, and you're in the passenger seat, and your son is speeding down the turnpike or down the Garden State Parkway and weaving because he's happy, he thinks it's fun. Aren't you going to stop him? Aren't you going to tell him, cut it out? You yell at him, take the keys away at some point, even, right? You have to. If you don't do that, you're not a good parent. You're an accessory to a possible accident, right? So they're not always going to like it, but it's what every parent has to do. So parents have to be parents and realize that they're not always going to be the good guy, but they have to do what they have to do. Question: is looting and rioting permissible? Of course not. It's never permissible to because a person is angry about the wrong, the way in which they go about it has to be obligatory, right? So that was the question here. The way in which things go about, permissible. And not only that, constructive, right? So, what's going on is very unfortunate. I didn't really keep tabs last night on what happened, but it is getting pretty wild and pretty crazy. And that's the dhulm. When dhulm happens, when oppression happens, and it's not addressed year after year, decade after decade, even we're reaching century after century, okay, what you're going to beget may be worse by remaining silent about it, that it didn't stop. When dhulm doesn't stop, it sort of you can imagine chipping away and poking away at a bear, right? Eventually, the reaction is going to be far worse, okay? And so that's one of the reasons why it's important to forbid the wrong, because especially if it's an injustice, you want things to stop, in a way that's less harmful, because if you don't stop it, there's going to be a rebound effect, and the Quran will tell us, you did this, you caused this, you were silent about the wrong, you caused this. It's wrong, it's worse, and the Quran, Allah says that we stop one oppressor sometimes with another oppressor, right? So what Britain did in India, what stopped them? Hitler distracted England, right, and forced them out and forced all the resources to war, and then they left to India. Okay, they didn't leave because they wanted to do good or something, or they were turned righteous. They left because they couldn't keep it up anymore, and they had busied by a war. So oppressors stop other oppressors, and if you don't stop oppression, what you might end up doing is sort of stimulating another oppressor, right? And you force in their hands. That they might still be guilty, and Allah is the judge, but and fiqh is also a judge, but you're forcing people's hands eventually, right? And so, as we've seen in Palestine, not every single reaction of the Palestinian people was permissible in Islam, right? But I would say, I don't endorse X, Y, and Z. I won't endorse certain things, and Sharia won't endorse it. Not me myself. Sharia doesn't endorse certain reactions. Okay, killing innocent people and women and children in Israel, you can't endorse it by Sharia. Okay, but at the same time, you force their hands. Okay, you keep oppressing people, they're going to rise up, and they're not going to use you didn't use justice in treating them. Why do you expect them now to use justice in defending themselves? Okay, defend yourself, but in the right way. Okay, but you didn't treat them in the right way to begin with, so we end up losing moral authority if that's the case. So that's the important point here. Norfolk 1. Should we be prepared if the situation gets worse after what Sheikh Amin yesterday, prepared to protect ourselves in our jama'ah at all times? And how that is, Allahu Alam. Okay, Allahu Alam. Dr. Al-Masri says, I participated in a rally for George Floyd in Toms River, spent 3 hours, and I feel so good to be there, because that's what you can do. That's all we could do is advocate, right? So you have to go out and subhanAllah, in one of the countries, I'm not going to say, where they were trying to take down one of the dictators, there were Muslims, huffaz of Quran, and scholars who said, by Allah, we were there in the rallies, these marches and protests, smelling the scent of musk, right? That this was a place that was full of sakina, and that so malaika, angels, and spirituality is not just on the rug with the beads, with the khalwa is not only there, is where malaika and serenity comes down. Malaika and their sakina that they bring with them is also in any act for justice. As we said, our work in society is divided into two categories. It's either going to be advocating for justice, or it's going to be helping the needy. Okay, support for the fuqara and the masakin. You can't just, of course, whatever people can do, but you have to recognize both exist. You can't go feeding everybody. Okay, we want to feed people. Okay, but you're getting killed. I don't really do that. I only feed people. I feed you so that you can grow up and get killed. How does this make sense, right? So you have to be holistic. Likewise, you can't say I memorize Quran but I don't study fiqh. How? Right? You have to do everything in Islam, right? Udkhulu fi silmi kaffa. One of the interpretations of that, enter into Islam, all of it. Udkhulu fi silmi kaffa. Enter all of Islam. Likewise, in the past, it used to be, some people, they're Sufis and they do dhikr all day. But other people are being oppressed and hungry and we don't have anything to do. We make dua for them. It doesn't work like that. And the opposite doesn't work either. You can't be an activist and not seek knowledge. You have to know if the activism that you're doing is halal or haram, even, right? Okay. You can't be someone, as Imam al-Haddad said, people who are of that imbalance, there's some error in defect in their deen and maybe even nifaq. Someone who always wants to help the people, but he doesn't pray well. He never prays sunnah. He doesn't care about munajat with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He only wants to help the people. Imam al-Haddad said he should beware of riya and nifaq, right? Why would you take one part of the deen and you leave the other part, right? Why, as the Quran says in Surah Al-Baqarah, why do you take some of the book and not all the others? So we want the holistic Muslim. We want a Muslim who is well-rounded, right? If you had any person that you're going to hire, someone says, I'm very good with the computer, but I'm not good with the customer. Right? I don't know how to talk to customers. I'm not interested in talking to customers. But if you want me to click around on the computer, I could do that. Another person says, I'm great with customers, but I don't know how to count money. You need balance. Okay. You need balance. So that's why it's important for us to be a balanced community and balanced people. And this happens to be, just as Ramadan was time of ibadah, this is the time of amal. Whatever amal we can do, signing petitions, supporting, pushing up. And one of the leaders who are on the front line, this is not a subject that someone like myself can talk about. This is a subject someone like Sheikh Amin can talk about. This is what he dealt with. Likewise, you don't come and talk about the Palestinian issue. You're not Palestinian. You haven't tasted anything. Likewise, that's why that whole organization that went with the Zionists, this is probably a political issue, but we all agree that most of them weren't Palestinians. They were Muslims, but they were not Palestinians. And they were like, let's sit and discuss matters with the Zionists, right? Let's have a discussion, right? And let's hear their perspective. What are you? You didn't taste any of this, right? You don't know what's going on there. So get out of there. Let the Palestinians do that talk. And of course, 0 Palestinians showed up to those talks, right? We're talking about that organization. What's it called? I forget its name. It's irrelevant organization that was propped up by Zionist money. They paid for Muslims to come over, Muslim Leadership Initiative, or whatever it's called, for Muslims to go, and ultimately with the agenda to soften them on the issue. So we'll pay for you to come out, have these lunches, and let's have discussions, right? What are you talking about? Having a discussion? You're not Palestinian. Who are you to represent them? Likewise, when it comes to this issue, we haven't been touched by what African-American Muslims have been touched with. So they're the leaders on this subject, and all we can do, and what we can do, is use our platforms to try to push along what they're saying. So with that, I think we'll stop here, okay? And we will, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, close out with our dua. So let's stop this screen share and turn over to the closing dua that we always do in these community updates. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Here we go. Let's get the screen. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. تحصنت بذي العزة واعتصمت برب الملكوت وتوكلت على الحي الذي لا يموت. اللهم اصرف عنا الوباء بلطفك يا لطيف إنك على كل شيء قدير. تحصنت بذي العزة واعتصمت برب الملكوت وتوكلت على الحي الذي لا يموت. اللهم اصرف عنا الوباء بلطفك يا لطيف إنك على كل شيء قدير. تحصنت بذي العزة واعتصمت برب الملكوت وتوكلت على الحي الذي لا يموت. اللهم اصرف عنا الوباء بلطفك يا لطيف إنك على كل شيء قدير. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.